Good morning, everyone. We're going to call a meeting of the Board of Supervisors and the Redevelopment Authority to order. Today is Thursday, November 17th, 2016. It is 8:30 a.m. We're in the Community Center at the Sierra Room, 851 East William Street. We're on television. We're also on streaming on Granicus View, right? Okay. Can we have a roll call for all of us here, please, Sue? Thank you.
Good morning, Supervisor Aboud. Here. Supervisor Bonkowski. Supervisor Bagwell. Here. Supervisor Shirk. Here. Mayor Kroll. Here. Have a quorum.
Thank you, Sue. Is Nick Emery here? Or is Nick here? I don't see him. Why don't we stand and have just a moment of silence and personal thoughts, okay? Thank you very much. Let's call on Andy Engelman. Andy, would you lead us in the pledge this morning, please?
Please join with me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Andy, very much. All right, let's go to item 5, public comment. This is the time to comment and discuss on any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of this body. Good morning, Ms. Weiser. How are you this morning? Good morning.
I'm speaking anonymously due to the retaliation we survivors of domestic violence are receiving by law enforcement and the courts. In the 1990s, the state of Nevada was funded by the federal government under the Violence Against Women's Act. The money that came to the state of Nevada went to put persons in courthouses up and down the state to assist us survivors of domestic violence in legal issues. These persons that were staffed in the courthouses were not trained legally. They had no legal education, and they had no experience legally. As a result, numerous errors started occurring in cases involving survivors of domestic violence. The problem became so big that on June 3rd, 2010, the Supreme Court got involved. At that time, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court was James Hardesty. And he held a meeting. Carson City was represented. All of the cities throughout the state of Nevada were represented. And testimony was given by an official of an organization called NACE. That's the Nevada Association of Court Executives. This official with that association is an attorney by the name of Joseph Tomasino, and he gave testimony that the courts were destroying child abuse evidence. There was also overwhelming testimony from written and oral from litigants in the court system that their evidence was being destroyed, including child abuse evidence. I would now like to go on and tell you what is happening in Sparks, because the Sparks...
Well, hang on about Sparks, because it's
sure.
Kind of limited. We've been through this before, and I appreciate your take on what's happened at the Supreme Court level and things of that nature, and you're perfectly, that's the First Amendment right to say those things. What happens in Sparks is really not within our jurisdiction. But I get what you're saying, and I would just add for the record that we've had people look, the district attorney and others look at our process here, and we've not found any issue there. Now, I know that's the subject of litigation, so I'm not going to go any further. So I'd appreciate it if you don't bring up Sparks.
Okay, I'll continue then. The charter for Carson City does not include language that is being passed by the legislature in other communities. The reason this should concern Carson City is because once it gets passed, it's easy for the legislature to pass other communities. So this is language that I would recommend that the city begin investigating. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. All right. All right. Good morning.
Mr. Mayor, Board of Supervisors. I'm Don Leonard, Carson City. Some of you might know who I am. This concerns the senior center. I use that center, and about 3 weeks ago in the West Wing, East Wing, a whole section of it was cordoned off so that people who used that section could no longer go there. The offices that are there are still open on that south side of that East Wing. I wanted to make you aware that there appears not to be much going on there to fix it, but I remember here not too long ago when some people who used the swimming pool came and said, "Ooh, this place is a mess." The city got very active in fixing that pool. I hope that you will address this problem at the senior center, and that place is extremely busy. It's well used. Thank you.
Don, I appreciate that, and then let me put your mind at ease. We are all on top of that one in a big way, and I think, you know, we've just been notified this morning that our insurance carrier is going to pick up the cost, or the majority of that cost of doing that. It is a serious issue, and we're quite aware of that. So, and I think everybody here, I've been out to see it, and I think probably other board members have been out there as well. So,
very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right. All right. All right. Any other public comment? Hope. Good morning.
For the record, my name is Hope Tingle, and that's spelled with a T, I-N-G-L-E. Hope is pretty easy, I think. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Congratulations to those of you who won re-election, and to Mr. Barrett for his new position on the board. I would like to take this opportunity to remind all of you sitting on this board that as elected officials, you are public servants. A majority of the people of this community elected you on their behalf in their best interests. What that means is you serve the residents that live on Como Street, those folks that live on Woodside Drive and Airport Road, and the people living on East Nye Lane, as well as the residents of Silver Oak, Timberline, and Kings Canyon. You were elected to make the right decisions for the people of the entire community of Carson City, not just to make sure the Nevada Builders Alliance, Miles Brothers Construction, Shaheen Beecham, Q&D Construction, and Loomis & Associates get their business interests and needs taken care of. Your positions as members of this board obligate you to the people. That is what comes from public service. You have an obligation to make fair, unbiased, and thoughtful decisions about the direction this community goes. You have an obligation to consider all of the ramifications of the decisions you make, both physically and environmentally. When you take the oath of office, I want each of you to remember these obligations. I'm a citizen of this community, and as such, I will expect and demand that the decisions you make be in the best interests of this community as a whole. Do not make assumptions that you know what's best if you are not listening to your constituents. Do not make the mistake of thinking outgoing Supervisor Shirk was less than adequate supervisor because he didn't buy into the mentality of the majority of the rest of you. Rather, instead, he chose to listen to the people who voted him into office. If you think the partisanship of this board was not apparent, you're sadly mistaken, and I found it disturbing to say the least. That is not to say I was surprised by it, just disappointed, but I'm a big girl and I know not everybody gets along with everybody else. However, a show of respect for each other would have gone a long way toward earning the respect of others. But I digress. My point here is that only through communications with members of this community will you know what is important to them. I'm not just referring to the business owners, but those folks who normally don't offer opinions because they're just busy trying to live their lives. They're trying to keep their heads above water so that they can pay that water bill that keeps going up. So get out into the neighborhoods you haven't visited. Actively seek out community input. And if you're consistently hearing from the same folks telling you what a great job you're doing, you aren't doing a good enough job of community outreach. In conclusion, the last thing I wanted for this board was another member who drank the Kool-Aid. But that's what we got, and that's what we will have to live with until it changes. Rest assured, however, that I will be attending as many of these board meetings as I can, if for no other reason than to become a pearl from that grain of sand in the oyster. Thank you.
Thank you, Hope.
Have a good day.
You bet. All right. Other public comment? Anybody? I don't see any, so we'll close off public comment and we'll move to item 6, possible approval of the minutes of October 20th. Everybody had a chance to look at those? Motion's in order.
I move to approve the minutes of the Carson City Board of Supervisors from October 20th, 2016, with a previously submitted correction to a typographical error.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried, unanimous. Okay, let's take up item 7, the agenda. Any change to the agenda, Mr. City
No
Manager?
change.
Board members, anything? Okay. Unless there's an objection, then we will take the agenda as published. Let's now move from the dais down to the floor, and we'll take up the length of service awards to our good employees. Thank you. Jennifer. Oh, there she is, Jennifer Church Wards. I got that right? Thank you. Jennifer, on behalf of a grateful community, thank you for helping make Carson City a great place to live. This is in recognition and appreciation for 5 years of continuous service for your community. Thank you very much for being a great employee for us. So, and we look forward to 5 more years. All right. All right. Come on up. Let's go up here. Come on. Frank Morningham. Frank. Good morning, Frank. How are you today?
I'm doing well, and you, sir?
You keeping us safe?
Absolutely, sir.
You got a whole bunch of keeping us safe people here with you, too, today. That's good.
All my buddies.
Your buddies. Frank, this is on behalf of a grateful community. We'd like to thank you for and show our appreciation to you for 10 years of continuous and dedicated service to our community, for keeping us safe and in doing a lot of things to make us a wonderful community to live in. Thank you, Frank, very much. 10 years. That's great. All right. That was all right. That's a first, man.
It's TJ Bogan.
TJ Bogan. TriNet coming up. How's TriNet doing today?
Awesome.
Awesome?
Getting it done.
Getting that, now that you see that, that's a great way to say it. Getting it done. I have to remember that one. Getting it done. TJ, on behalf of a grateful community, and you know, I know there are a lot of you out here who are in the middle of a lot of different difficult things. Thanks for keeping us safe, and we'd like to show our appreciation for 10 years of service that you've given us on behalf of Carson City. So thank you very much, TJ. Okay. Come on up here. Craig. I'm sorry, Craig. Works in the court. I had that all. Morning, Craig. How's the courthouse doing today? Is it all right? Fantastic and busy? Okay, all right. Really busy? Really busy. I don't know what that means, but Craig, on behalf of a grateful community, let us give you this certificate of appreciation for 10 years of continuous and dedicated service to making sure that we have a beautiful community and that we're all safe and you're taking care of the courthouse. And I know that sometimes things get a little rowdy down there as well. So thanks very much, Craig, for your service. And we look forward to 10 more years. Come on up. Special Enforcement, Uriel Colazo. Set team. Uriel? Everybody's walking around like that? Okay. You guys all look in good shape. That's great, man. Uriel, in recognition and appreciation for 10 years of continuous and dedicated service to our community, thanks for keeping us safe. Thanks for making this community a better place to live. And we look forward to 10 more years of service. So thanks very much on behalf of all of us. Okay. Come on up here. Everybody's IT stuff work okay today? All the internet working all right? Everybody, nobody's had any problem with the IT? Granicus is working? Let's take a look up here. Huh? Oh, it is. Okay, well, Scott, come on up then. This is Scott Royal. Well, Scott, you are responsible, and I know you're part of the team that helps, keep the internet and keep all of our electronic stuff working real well. And on behalf of a grateful community and all of us here, we would like to show our appreciation by giving you the certificate of appreciation for 20 years of continuous and dedicated service. Thank you. Thanks, Scott. Pretty nice. Thanks. Come on up here. There. Yeah. Top of the totem pole. Top of the totem pole.
So can I have everyone who's here, friends and family that came to support these employees come up for the picture, please?
Everybody, come on up. There's going to be a room. We'll get them all in here.
Stand behind the selfie and you're out.
Get in there, man. All right, look that way.
1, 2, 3.
Get it? Rachel? Okay.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks. Good seats. Thank you. Thank you very much.
See you later.
Good to see you, man. We're going to leave on. Okay.
Hilarious. That guy's got us. He's hilarious. Freak selfie.
Oh, yeah, right. That was good.
Well, he's
Monahan.
quick too. He was like,
He was quick. Bang.
Did you guys notice that this Caterpillar is STD free?
yes.
STD free.
Just thought I'd point that out.
Okay, let's take up item number 9.
Having a good day.
Having a good day. Take up item number 9. This is to potentially approve the purchase of a Caterpillar C15 generator and transfer switch from Cashman Power Solutions to the NJPA. This is an amount of $110,970.04 to be funded from the Capital Grant Projects account. We have Laura here and Darren, and who else? We got the chief here. Okay. Good morning. Laura, you want to start off and did I say it all for you?
Pretty much.
Okay, all right. Who wants to explain what's going on here? Chief? Okay.
Sure, this is from the, good morning. This is from the grant that we got through the Homeland Security for the generator to make the MAC to where we can use it as a shelter if we have to. So that's a good thing. So this is the purchase of the generator, and then once we have that, then we can work on the installation. And that's what the other, somebody brought up, the other grant revenues that are there will be used for that, for those, that's when Public Works is to install it. So, and we have, we're bumping into our purchase deadline. We got hung up a little bit because we had to wait for that building to clear because you can't mix federal funds with the other funds, and that's why it took us a little while to go through that. And once the building cleared of funding, now we're able to purchase use the grant system to go through and purchase our generator.
And Bob, can you just add the fact that I think is very important, that that'll allow the MAC to be used as a mass care and shelter site during an emergency?
Yeah, that's the whole reason why we went and got that grant, is to use that so we have a designated shelter that has the ability because the way it's built, where we can actually put different folks in there and different ways to do that in that building. So it's going to work out good for us if we ever have to use it. Hopefully never do, but at least we're prepared to.
Any other board members? We want to, as we said, when you went out for the grant, thanks for keeping an eagle eye out for some of these grants that can do this, because that's a great addition to the MAC. So, all right, public comment, anybody? I don't see any. Motions in order. Supervisor Abel, go.
I move to approve the purchase of a Caterpillar C15 generator and transfer switch from Cashman Power Solutions through National Joint Powers Alliance, joinder number 080613, for an amount of $110,970.04 to be funded from the Grant Fund Capital Projects, the MAC Generator Project account.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing and seeing none. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chief. Thanks. All right, let's take up, Chief, you're going to stay there, and Laura, you're there. You're okay. Let's take up item 10.
The chief day.
It's a chief day. Yeah.
It is, huh?
Yeah.
This is for possible action to potentially authorize Carson City to accept a grant award in the amount of $102,389 from the Southern Nevada Public Land Management Act, SMIPLA, through the Bureau of Land Management, Carson City Westside Hazardous Fuels Coalition Collection Project. Chief, tell us what's going on here and where we are on this project.
Okay, so we have a couple grants for you. For the record, Bob Strand's Fire Chief, and I have sitting next to me Rod Rummel. He's our fuels management guy, and is pretty instrumental in helping us write these grants and get the funding. So really, he gets all the credit, but I'm the one talking. So one of the things we have today outside of the grants is this particular one is our trailer project. And what it's going to allow us to do is currently, you guys all know that we do have the Wildland Fuels trailer project, and we use it for areas of the city. This is specifically going to be on our west side. And the folks are going to be able to call us and use this. And last time we were on a limited grant fund, we actually had to increase our revenue from the general fund to be able to maintain the project that we're currently doing for the city. So we went after a grant to help us on the west side. And luckily, through the SNPLMA process, we were able to obtain this grant. And it's going to be our west side trailer program for folks that are going to really help us out with their wildland fuels management. And that's what this is for.
Questions? Anybody? Public comment?
I just want to comment.
Comments in order.
I just want to say this is a great program. Those trailers are always full.
They are. They're always bombing around the city, too, if you notice. So
They are.
Anything else? Motions in order. Somebody want? Okay. Supervisor Bund.
I move to authorize Carson City to accept a grant award in the amount of $102,389 from the Southern Nevada Public Land Management Act through the Bureau of Land Management for the Carson City Westside Hazardous Fuels Collection Project.
Motion second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Let's take up Corollary 110 Bravo. This is potentially to accept a grant amount of $1,999,900 through SMIPLA, again for the Hazardous Fuels Reduction Project. Chief?
So with both of these combined with the SNPLMA, we're bringing in, a little over $2.1 million. And it's a great benefit to the citizens of Carson City, and especially for us on the Wildland Fuels Project. So what this is going to do, it's going to allow us to have crews that are going to go out and not only take out some of the brush areas, but we also use mastication machines. So it gives us the ability and the funding to do that. So we have to do so many acres. So under this grant project, we're slated for 943 acres to be able to clear that. And it's going to take us, we can't do it all at once. We don't have the manpower. So over the 5-year period, we're going to do a certain amount of acres every year to, one, that's a qualifying for the grant. And we do two things. One is we're going to go out there and cut these things and make these big slash piles, if you will. And that's where we kind of stack everything up. And then we're also going to then use mastication devices when we can go out and do that. But usually sometimes the terrain is too steep, so we have to use manpower to go out and do it. So one of the questions is, what do you do with the fuel once you create these big piles, all right? So what happens is that we usually make them either 8x8 or 10x10 piles, so they're not these big, huge piles that are out there. And then we have to come back in the wintertime and go ahead and burn those. So we have to have two projects going. One's going to be in the summertime where we're actually doing the work, and then in the wintertime we have to go back and clear those piles, and we let them dry, and then in the wintertime we'll come back and then we'll burn them. Obviously, in light of what happened in our neighbors, it's a completely different system than what we do when we're burning these slash piles than what happened there. They were doing just a regular, basically a ground burn to get rid of the lower ladder fields where it can climb up the trees and catch on fire. So what we're going to do here, it's a little bit different. We're just doing the pile. So you're not going to have these big areas that are burning. It's not going to be going on for days and days and days to burn that section. They're going to be limited, and the time frame isn't as long for those to work. And secondarily, obviously, with what's going on, some of our safeguards is that we're going to make sure that we do have crews on there to make sure that we can project the weather a little better to know that we're not having 80-mile-an-hour winds coming, so that we don't have any of these issues. And we, I'm pretty sure you know, but we actually get upgraded weather reports than the normal population does. And so we're aware of what our weather patterns are, and that's why even this year on the open burning, I delayed it until late in November versus some other folks opened it up early. So, one of the big things, especially now, we're really cognizant of how that works. Our safeguards are going to be, we'll have crews on the ground there, we'll have crews there overnight, and that's why if you look at how we're going to spend these funds and the amount of money it takes to do that is because of those safeguards and what it takes to put the crews on the ground. So hopefully that answers that for you.
It does indeed. It does indeed. And I got to say, every time when I'm out on one of your fires, you're always watching the weather. And I kind of wondered, how do you get up to date? How do you get weather with it? It's going to happen in an hour.
We're pretty good. We have pretty good technology, but we have access to on-site weather reports, and then we have contracts with NOAA, and we also have contracts with the new with Nevada Reno Weather that we can call them instantly and get our specific area fireground weather forecasting, and that's part of our safety program that we have. So we can alert crews if we know there's a wind change coming, we can tell them that it's there. So we have on-site instantaneous weather reports.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Questions?
I just have a clarification?
You bet. Go.
Is it a 5-year or a 6-year project?
Well, we're going to say it's going to be 6 years,
Okay.
and if we get it done early, we will, but something usually always happens, so we're going to say it's designated over a 6-year period.
Perfect.
All right. Other questions or comments? Public comment? Anybody? I don't see any motions in order. Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make it.
Motions in order.
I move to authorize Carson City to accept a grant award in the amount of $1,999,900 from the Southern Nevada Public Land Management Act through the Bureau of Land Management for the Carson City West Side Hazardous Fuels Reduction Project.
Motion and a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion. Hearing and seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Unanimous. Thank you, Chief. Let's take up the last one. This is authorize you to apply for Assistance to Firefighters Grant through FEMA. You want to take that up?
And this one, you guys don't have the specific grant in front of you because we're not done with it yet. We have to actually turn it in tomorrow. So what we're looking at is we're trying to upgrade our radio comms communication system, and we're looking at two things. One is we have portable handheld radios, and our radios are actually ending their life cycle. Most of them are between 10 to 15 years old. And the new technology, we have to go for different channels that we have to have. We have to have better interoperability. So in other words, if we go to California or even go into Reno where they kick into 800 megahertz, we have to be able to turn the dials and move those. And currently, we don't have those. So under this particular grant, this is the same type of funding source. Last year, we went after the truck company, but we didn't get it. So this year, we're after, because on some of the grant awards, they're not approving that amount of money for stuff. And looking at some of the other grant recipients, it was either communications or safety equipment. So this year we've decided to go after the communication system. So the grant is actually going to be a little less than what we're providing here. It's about $290,000 because we lowered the amount of radios that the portables that we're going to replace. We're going to replace them all, just not having a spare bank, if you will. And then we're also including some of the new radios that go into the fire trucks, which is our mobile radios versus just the handhelds, and we have to replace those also. And so our total price is going to be roughly about $289,000 to $300,000, depending. And then we have a 10% match on that grant system that's there. So we're asking for approval for that, so we can turn the paperwork in, and hopefully we can get that. Also in the area, Tahoe Douglas and East Fork are combining themselves too. They're also after a radio grant. So if we can get those guys lucky enough to get a grant, and so are we, then we can change all of our comm systems in our whole specific region for this area, which should be really a nice thing to have.
And it's just unusual on this, you mentioned the 10% match. In this particular case, it appears that the 10% match is 10% of the grant amount and not 10% of the scope of work, which is a little different than we're used to seeing. So, and they give you that amount by using a calculator, right? So you don't have to do the math. You just plug in the amount that you're asking for.
Correct.
And it gives you what the
It
grant.
says on, it actually says on populations based less than 100,000, it's 10%, but when they actually calculate their weird little formula in, it really comes out to about 8.9 to 9%. But that's their magic math, but it does say 10%, so that's where we're going to figure.
Chief, it seems like you guys do pretty well in getting grants.
Yeah, we're getting pretty good at it. So
We're getting pretty good at it.
I was talking earlier, since I've been the chief, our group and our team, we brought in over about 2.4 million so far into Carson City, which is great. So we're doing a good job, and these guys do a really good job about trying to scour them out. And I come to them and go, hey, we should apply for this grant. And they look at me like, really? Because they're a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time and efforts to write them. And especially then we have to follow through the process to make sure that they get there. And I just want to commend Rod. He did a lot of work on this particular one for Stimpleba, and to bring in $2 million into the city is awesome for the next 5 years. So I just want to thank him for doing a great job.
Very good. Thank you on behalf of all of us, too. All right. All right.
Make a motion.
Did I get public comment already?
Comment.
Public comment, anybody? Okay, I didn't see any motions on, but Supervisor Bagwell, go.
Okay, so I'm going to try to change this up a little bit then to meet the testimony that you provided. So I make a motion to authorize Carson City Fire Department the permission to apply for an Assistance to Firefighters grant through FEMA in the amount not to exceed $325,000 to purchase compliant radios, because you might, anyway.
That works.
There's motion and a second on the motion. Discussion?
Yes.
Discussion in order.
The motion is for 320, not to exceed 325, but the amount here is 325, 300.34.
He's going to only do like 300 or...
Yeah, we're lowering the dollar amount from this. We put that in initially from our request, and we're actually picking up,
All right,
I think it's...
so you're okay with the motion?
Yes.
All right.
All right, on the motion, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thanks, Chief. Thank you very much
Thank you.
also. All right. Let's take up Public Works. Are you ready to go, or we need to fire up the, you need a minute to get things lined up? You all right? All right. We're going to take up item 11A. This is a report from the Utility Financial Oversight Committee, together with the possible adoption of Resolution 2016R- whatever we make it here today, which amends an existing resolution. We have here the chairman of the the Utility Finance Oversight Committee, and who else do we have? Mr. Bruchetta. So, and also announce who else we got here for the record. So go ahead.
Dave Bruchetta is here from Public Works, and I'd like to introduce Mike Spell, who's a member of our committee appointed by
Mike.
Lori Bagwell. Mike was an auditor at the Legislative Council Bureau, retired, thinking he was going to have lots of spare time, but Lori Bagwell took care of that, and so he's been pretty busy with our committee. For the record, this is Andy Engelman, chairman of the Utility Finance Oversight Committee. As you may recall, a few months ago, we looked at our resolution and discovered that half the things we were doing we weren't supposed to be doing, that resolution didn't allow us to do those projects that you asked of us. So we held a couple of meetings to redo the resolution, and Dan Yu, our attorney, more or less did it. Dan also comes out of the Legislative Council Bureau, and so some of this language in here is wordsmithing, as the people who work with the legislature know that they like to rearrange words and change things so that they read better. At least to attorneys, it reads better. So, so some of the language in here is Dan's just changing the words around because he thought that it read better. So if you'd like me to, I'll go through this proposed resolution.
I think we've, unless there's a highlight, I think we've all had a chance to read it. I think we've had a chance to discuss, what's going on here. Unless the board wants to have Andy, you're certainly welcome to do that, but I think we know what's going on. But you're welcome to do that if you want, Andy, so.
Okay, I think there's just a couple of changes
Sure.
that I'd like to highlight maybe
Go.
to the committee. One of them has to do with the number of meetings that we'll be holding. Before, the resolution said we could only meet in February and March, and that was it. And so looking back over what had happened over the previous couple of years, we went with 4 meetings with plus a planning meeting in January. And the 4 meetings will be more or less quarterly. And I was surprised. Our committee, very busy people, and they don't love to meet. So I was surprised when the committee said they thought this was a really good idea, because this way, if there's an emergency of some kind, if something happens with the budget, we can get ahead of it this way. If you recall, last year you approved a budget that we didn't see. The budget we approved had to be so much earlier than the numbers that came in that it wasn't even the budget that we saw. So this way we'll avoid that. And I think staff felt that would also be more helpful for them, that we would be able to time things closer to when they bring them here to the board. So, and then there's a couple of things that we'll probably be looking at over the next year, such as stormwater and so forth. So that's why we're going with about 5 meetings. And in January, the committee will decide more or less how they want to structure it and how they want to take it up, so forth. Then on item 3 in this, where we talk about the financial policies provided by the FCS group. And the reason why we're going with that and the reason why Mike is here. Mike and I met with Public Works people, Darren and Dave, last summer, and Mike had some suggestions for a way to make things a little bit more transparent, I guess. And actually, I'd like to let him explain that and then quickly explain why we're going with the FCS, and Dave can also add to that.
Morning. In the current citywide financial policies, for the utilities, specifically water and sewer, when we get into the capital reserve funds and some of the debt management, the language that was put in the after the rates were increased was somewhat confusing. It almost implies that there's more than one fund in the capital works project. So dealing with staff, and staff also had the same concerns. They're looking at now to revising the city policy to be a little less specific because there are other enterprise funds besides the water and sewer that cannot comply with the specific recommendations that were in the citywide or the current citywide. And so we figured it would be better to kind of tone those down so that it would be applicable to all enterprise. And by alluding to the FCS report, that's where we get into the specifics of what they recommended as far as the amount of reserve that should be in the capital construction funds, the operating reserves for both the water and the sewer, the specific amount they needed in the operating, and as well as the debt management policies. That way, by referring to that report, we have a clear mandate to what the compliance should be when they present their budget to us, and when we review to see if they are meeting those reserve balances and those debt service requirements.
Very good.
And let me say
Very
that
good, yeah.
we were only concerned with the water sewer. Everything else in the city is none of our business, all right? That's finance, that's everybody else. Our only focus is the water sewer funds.
Lori.
So that kind of goes a little bit where my question is stormwater included within this?
Yes, I mean, it will be. I mean, we haven't really gotten into stormwater. We've approved a budget for it every year, but we haven't done anything more with it than that.
Because I just want it clear on the record that
we're doing it.
that it includes stormwater and the authority, and all the understanding is that it does. And then I also want to, does it mean that the Utility Finance Committee has the ability to look at project-specific details or only aggregate details? Because I'm concerned in part of the language that they're making the conclusion on the aggregate. And so long as everybody's okay that they can see project-specific detail, I'm fine with that.
I think it depends on what kind of detail you're talking about. And I know our committee felt we did not want to look, for instance, at individual contracts and go through number by number. And we're there to work in collaboration with staff. And, but certainly projects, there are projects we will be looking at. We expect to be involved in helping staff as far as rates are concerned and some other projects. I know that, excuse me, I think I'm allergic to this room.
That's not bad.
One of the things that we've been looking at, or the committee has not yet looked at, but I've been working on that we expect to come up this year, is a way to help people on limited incomes pay their water bill. And so that's a project that we'll be suggesting to the committee in January that we take a look at. I think I figured out a way to do that. And so there's some things like that maybe the committee will want to do. Okay. Does that answer your question?
So thank you guys very much for all the hard work that you've been doing. So, and please pass that on to the rest of your committee too, because I know it's a tedious and a lot of numbers to look at. But thank you again on behalf of everybody. It just keeps everything transparent and on the up and up. So thank you.
And I just want to say thank you for revising the meeting schedule. I know it's harder for you, but it does make it more pertinent to the actual budget, and that's what this oversight committee is supposed to do. So I think that's great. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Public comment, anybody? Motion's in order. Supervisor Bankowski, go.
I move to accept the report from the Utility Finance Oversight Committee Chair and adopt resolution number 2016-R 27, which amends resolution 2013-45A, formally establishing the Carson City Utility Finance Oversight Committee.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion, Supervisor Shirk.
Earlier, when this resolution came before the board, I was the lone supervisor, as usual, who voted against it. And that was because of the wording of that. And you can see how much has changed from the original that I voted against and where we're at today with this new resolution. I will be voting in favor of it. Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Good testimony this morning. Thank you. All right. All right, let's take up 11 Bravo, the Traffic Committee. You all set up? You need a minute. You ready?
Yep.
All right.
All ready. Okay. My name is Patrick Pittenger. I'm the Transportation Manager for Carson City Public Works. And my presentation today is for informational purposes. It's an update on the Transportation Resource Advisory Forum for Carson City, which happens to spell, sounds like traffic, spelled a little differently, but it's called the Traffic Group. It was actually formed as advisory to staff at the direction of the Carson City RTC in May of this year. And previously in June of this year, we appeared before this board as well, and we were asked to come back and provide a report to this body as well. So this is our first report back to the Board of Supervisors. We have been reporting to the RTC at meetings as we've gone through the year. There have been 3 meetings directly with the traffic group, fourth Thursday of June, July, and August, And on the fourth Thursday of September, we actually scheduled a public meeting for the kickoff of the South Carson Street Complete Streets Corridor Study, and we asked the traffic members if they were available to attend that. I'm also going to be providing you some information about work that's been completed this year on the streets and our process moving forward with traffic and RTC. Just starting with the real basics, this is a map of the street system of Carson City. It doesn't show all the local roads. We have about 273 miles of paved roads in Carson City, and what's depicted here is the functional classification showing arterials and collector streets as well as U.S. highways. This is an updated graphic from what you've seen previously. I'm very happy to report that we now have the fiscal year 2016 complete figures in for both revenue, and much of that revenue is based on gallons of gas sold. And because a lot of our revenues come from gas tax established back in 1997. As you can see, there was a significant increase from 2015 to 2016 in the amount of gallons of gas sold. It's still actually, unfortunately, below the years 2005 through 2008, but that is certainly a good indication that there was additional revenues. This slide is also one that you've seen previously, but has been updated with an additional year. As you can see, that increase in the gallons of gas sold has affected our revenues. Additionally, a smaller portion of the revenues for the streets fund is made up of a dedicated sales tax, and you can see that the increase in the combination of sales tax and gas tax has resulted in additional revenues. As you're going to see, it's still not sufficient to properly maintain our roads, but it's absolutely a positive step.
Patrick, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
You know, there's a new gas station going in at Airport on Highway 50. Is that where it is?
There are several new and expanded gas stations.
What does that mean in terms, if you know, I mean, in terms of gallons of gas sold in our community?
Well,
is it just splitting the pie the way it is, or is it adding?
Well, there is definitely a splitting of the pie, but because there is a general increase, for example, we did have a new station that was implemented at Smith's a couple years ago, and there definitely has been an uptick in gallons sold overall, and I can't tell you if it would have gone up with or without Smith's, but definitely that's contributing now. Actually, just for the record, the three that I know that are under construction today, one at US 50 at College and where it meets College and Fairview, and then expansion of two existing facilities, both at freeway interchanges. The Golden Gate Petroleum at Highway 50 is expanding, and there's a large expansion happening at the Maverick gas station on College Parkway. And that one is primarily for diesel pumps, and unfortunately, we the city do not receive any fuel tax revenue from diesel fuel. There are state and gas taxes for diesel, but not local.
So currently, there's a difference in gas tax between us and Washoe County of 27 cents, is that
Yes,
correct?
approximately 27 cents, and it'll become greater.
Which will increase each year. So I would hazard a guess that some of this increase in gallons sold that you see is from the commuter traffic that now fills up here because of that differential in fuel price. So people that live in Reno that work here are probably just filling up here and not filling up in Carson.
Yeah, well, I don't have any hard data to that. Anecdotally, I've heard that quite a bit. All right. Talking about street projects that we did here in 2016, I'm not going to read this whole slide for you. There were a lot of projects done, but one thing I want to emphasize is that there was a reason that people thought that there was more construction out there this year, and that's because there was. One of the big reasons is that we actually have changed how we're doing business over at Public Works. Instead of waiting until July 1st of this year to get our projects designed, we started designing them back in spring. So we were actually able to expend our fiscal year 2016 money during calendar year 2016, but also a good portion of our fiscal year 27 money was spent during calendar year 16, which is very advantageous because it gets the projects out there, but it also means that if, as it did happen, if the bids come in well, that RTC awards, that means that we know now what additional resources we have available to us, and we've already started designing another project that's going to be able to be implemented during this fiscal year because of the available funds. So this just shows some of the major projects that we worked on. We didn't show the city-wide projects like wide crack repair and patching that happened in many areas of the city. But as you can see, there was a large area of the city that was treated. A lot of that wide crack repair was in several different areas of town, including Silver Oak and on North Ridge. Patching happened on many areas of the city. You'll see that in a little while. But I want to note that there were a lot of other projects that if someone says, well, what about that project on Washington or on Division or on Fleischman that you did? There were great street improvements that happened there, but those were actually utility projects that were completed without the use of any gas tax dollars. But they did benefit the roads, and we certainly appreciate that.
Patrick, can I ask you a question on the Gonai Road, Convair Drive?
Yes.
Where we had the public-private partnership. Is the 575 the total or our share?
That was the total. Yeah, that was the total.
So
and then
how much came from the private?
$125,000 approximately. A few dollars more, but very close to $125,000.
Also on that same page, sorry, Patrick.
Yes, sir.
The downtown Carson Street, what is that dollar amount? There's no dollar amount there.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was approximately $8.1 million for that project. I'm looking at Danny Rotter to make sure. But once again, there were no gas tax dollars or streets sales tax dollars included in that project. And in addition to all of these projects, we also had things like the Schultz Ranch development, which of course constructed roads, which was not directly city funded. And as well, everybody knows that NDOT's been working hard, so there's been more construction activity for NDOT projects as well, primarily the freeway. Just to show you some of the projects that we did, this is that project that Supervisor Bagwell just mentioned. Happy to put Cinderlight's name up there. They contributed $125,000 per their special use permit that was approved about 12 years ago. The road was in really bad shape. It's much better now. That was the worst spot on Gonai. We actually combined that with a reconstruction of a portion of Convair. We got a better bid because it was the same contractor, and they came out there and did it. In the upper left picture, I know it's small, but it was really, the road was really shot, to use a technical term. We actually paved it on that August 6th, that was actually a Saturday, paved it to reduce the impacts on the businesses, and by August 18th, it was open to traffic there. New traffic signal, this is a couple of weeks ago. Now, this is at the intersection of College and Research. This is also a public-private partnership. The RTC entered an agreement with Maverick, the gas station chain. We the city designed the project. Maverick is contracting with the contractor approximately $500,000, and the RTC will over the next 5 years reimburse Maverick for half of the cost of that signal. This is a major safety improvement, especially with the coming of additional traffic, including large trucks using that diesel facility that we mentioned previously. And we expect it, and we expect at this time that this signal will be operational within the next couple weeks. Sidewalk repair project. Last spring, we did have some available resources. This is a under $100,000 project, but very, very needed. On the left side there, this is Winnie Lane, just east of Mountain Street there. We're actually doing a lot of work there, and as you can see in the right picture, they removed entirely that entire section and have now, they're still underway out there, but this particular portion has been paved back with concrete. Lampa Lane, this to show you that there's been a mixture of different projects. They're not all reconstructs or different things that we're doing out there. Lampa Lane admittedly needs to be reconstructed. It's a couple $1 million project. We haven't done an estimate for that lately. But without the available funds to do that reconstruction project, we did want to do something to improve the ride quality out there and to extend the life. We did what's called a cape seal. We haven't done in quite a long time. It's actually a combination of two different kinds of seals. On the left is a chip seal. That's the first layer that's put down that has exposed rock, and then the week later we came back and put a micro seal over the top. And I will note that prior to this being done, as is required by federal law, we had to go out there and do a separate project to fix the ADA ramps along this road. If you do anything of this significance or greater, you do have to make ADA improvements. So we did that just in advance of these slides that you see here. The wide crack repair project, this was actually also not gas tax funded. This was funded by a transfer of general fund monies from the general fund to the streets fund at the direction of this Board of Supervisors. What we did was we addressed roads that were generally in good shape but did have periodic wide cracks. You can see some examples here where we actually cut out entire sections, paved them back. One of these pictures, one on the left is in the Silver Oak neighborhood. The one on the right is actually on Northridge, just east of Roop Street. Airport Road is another arterial collector street that was in very bad condition. You can see in the left picture there. It serves an important connection into this neighborhood. We've been looking to do it for some time. It's very well used. As you can see on the right, it was completely repaved, and there was also some sidewalk work done there as well. There was a CDBG, Community Development Block Grant funded project that was awarded the previous year that was completed in 2016. On the left is Monte Rosa Drive. This is near Empire Elementary School, and this was 100% federally funded sidewalk improvement project in a well-deserving area where a lot of kids walk to school. Everybody knows about the downtown project. I just threw a couple in there just because, once again, with these sharing information we shared with the traffic group as well. Just a couple of pictures, but there are many more out there. East 5th Street. This was also a relatively small in value, under $100,000 project, but sorely needed. This area is it's the east end of East 5th Street where it ends. It's the access to the park. It's also the Korean War Memorial there in the center. And there were very serious pavement and drainage issues. If it rained there, even if a week after it rained, you'd still have water standing there. It was in really bad shape. We're very happy to improve that. We now have handicap parking. And while we didn't do it solely for the purpose of the Korean War Memorial, I'm happy to say that I did speak to that group, and they're very happy that we did improve this area. Curry Street, another example of a different type of treatment. This was also not a reconstruction. This was a micropave that was done in June to help improve the conditions of that roadway in lieu of a larger project. This is just west of the Railroad Museum. You can see it there. Appian Way, this is on the south side of the city. Appian Way, while it's not a major arterial, it is a key connection into that neighborhood. It connects to a subdivision that just actually rebuilt the east end of Appian Way. It's an emergency response route identified in our pavement management system, like a lot of these roads, as one deserving. As you can see in the left picture, it was in really bad shape prior to our reconstruction. We actually shifted the project a little bit to the east in recognition of a development which may come that could have potentially caused our new road to be cut after building it. So we actually, instead of building the very west block of Appian Way, we actually shifted it a little bit to the east to make sure that we avoided any conflict with development. But we're very happy how this turned out here.
Patrick, when you talk about that area of town, when were those streets put in, and were they engineered in, or were they just, talk to us about the subgrade and things of those streets out there.
Well, yeah, and I'll speak to the limits of my knowledge, because it is correct, Mr. Mayor, that we've had folks that, have called and said, hey, these were put in, 30 years ago, and they haven't been touched much since. If you go down there, you can see you don't have to do what we call core drilling to see what's there. You can see very clearly that what you have down there for most of those roads is only a couple of inches of asphalt that in many cases was just put right onto the material that was already there. As compared to, for example, this road that you're looking at here, this actually had a geotechnical report. We looked at exactly what the cross-section should be to make sure it was appropriate for what was out there, 3 inches of asphalt in this case on 6 inches of base. Everything else was hogged up beforehand. So it is true that the roads were built decades ago, and they were not built to the standards that you're seeing that we use today.
There's also a number of roads down there that are grindings, just grindings laid down and then oil put on top and it rolled. So there's a mixed bag.
Which, for example, which was what was done out on Sierra Vista Lane, for example, which we now see also failing.
Other than Sierra Vista, do we have unpaved roads in Carson City?
We have very few unpaved roads. There's a, for example, there's a Line Drive, which is actually in this neighborhood on the east side, right up against the freeway. But there are very few unpaved roads left in the city.
Right. And the road that goes to in front of the Nevada Appeal and goes back into the, who owns that road and why? What's happening on that road?
That's Mallory Way. Is the name of that road. It's a very long cul-de-sac. It's actually not a city-owned road. It is in very poor shape. It's not part of our pavement management system because it's not a city that's owned by the road. But we have been there before. We know that it's in poor condition and there are definitely drainage issues out there. But once again, it's not part of the city system as it is a privately owned road. As I mentioned previously, we did a citywide patching project, which was also partially funded through that $370,000 transferred from the general fund. We primarily were on arterial and collector streets as the ones that have higher speed limits, higher volumes of traffic. As you can see here, we had the upper right picture is of South Carson Street. The lower one is of Colorado Street. We also did work on Roop over by Northridge. We did work on Silver Sage down by Eagle Station south of Kuntz. And the one exception to being an arterial collectors was this small cul-de-sac actually that was in extremely poor condition and beyond the crack filling capabilities of the city. But for the most part, we were on the larger streets. Streets employees, I want to make sure to put this in here. This is not, big ticket contract work where you go out and award a $300,000 contract or something. But I want to make sure that everyone is aware that our streets crews are out there working every day. A couple of pictures I showed here. This is some crack filling operation that was going on in June east of Lampa Lane. The right picture there, this was a streets funded acquisition this year. That was our new patching truck. Just so you know that when you saw that in the budget that we were going to buy a patching truck, we did buy said patching truck, and it has been in use and it's been very useful. In this picture, there was a lot of sidewalk work going on in Kingsley Lane this year, and after the concrete crew would build the sidewalk, the patch crew would come and patch the asphalt back between the road and the new concrete. And as I've shared with this group before, I don't have pictures for all these, and I don't need them, but just as a reminder, we have limited staff that's out there maintaining about 50 traffic signals. We have sweeper operators, we do snowplow, we do the crack filling, the patching, we do a lot of tree trimming. We get a lot of calls, particularly this year, for come trim trees that are, for example, blocking a stop sign. That's a safety issue. We need to get out there and do that. We have thousands of signs in the city of various types. If somebody hits a speed limit sign or whatever, we need to put it back up. We stripe crosswalks, and we respond to emergencies as necessary. And this isn't an emergency, like a fire or a flood or something like that. But we have a small concrete crew that's I dare say one of the hardest working groups in the city. We have 3 people out there trying to maintain the concrete on over 200 miles of roads. And this was just one example. I was literally out walking my dogs, and I went, wow, what happened to this? And the heat just buckled this concrete right out of the ground. And they had this thing busted out the next day and poured back within a few days, frankly. But there are things like this that are real tripping hazards and liabilities for the city that we need to make sure that we stay on top of. And we appreciate when people call us and tell us these things, because I walk a lot, but I don't walk every street. Of course, the freeway, everybody's seen the freeway moving along. There's just a couple of pictures. We got a tour of their asphalt plant. It was a wonderful thing. They paved as much as they could, and right now they're working very hard on that south intersection on the south side of town. A lot of people have seen construction there going for a couple of months. They got a whole new signal system that's coming in there at the south terminus of the freeway, so we're very much looking forward to that coming in. Okay, moving into what we shared with the traffic group, we actually had Dr. Ellie Hodge, professor of civil engineering, PhD in pavement management engineering, make a presentation to the traffic group in July. And he shared with them, the basics of pavement management, the pavement management system that has been built for the city with a software called MicroPaver, with data that's collected every few years on the conditions of our roads. And he explained to them, I'm just going to bring this up here, how there is a deterioration curve that they've developed over many years with data not just from Carson City but from Washoe County as well. So it's an area-specific curve. This is a generic one, but the concept is, of course, that as roads deteriorate, there are points at which you can do preventive maintenance and you can do minor rehabilitation that can not only improve the benefit to the residents on a daily basis, but also extend the life of that pavement. And so there are techniques that we know, for example, when is a good time to slurry seal a road to extend its life? Sometimes you can slurry seal a road just to make it a nicer ride, but there are specific actions you can take to extend the life. There are 273 miles of paved roads. There are about 51 million square feet of asphalt. We primarily have asphalt roads in Carson City, not concrete. And the value of those, if you had to replace them all, is just under $300 million. If you had to go and do that. And as they mentioned, small improvements can yield big benefits. You can do, there are times when you can do slurry seals, if you have the money available, that can extend the life of a road if you do the right roads. How do you approach it? There's always limited money. This is a problem across the country. There's usually not enough money to do everything you should be doing. But by using a pavement management system, you can improve your practices and how you maintain your roads. It allows for project prioritization, allows you to plan and budget. And there are a couple different softwares out there. We use one called Paver. And we rank our roads on a score of 0 to 100 using those systems that collect the data on the different types of cracks and problems with our roads. And they're rated from 0 to 100. So 100 is a brand new road. And as you can see here, if you get down to, say, 30, it was very poor. You've got a failing pavement. And one of the concepts we shared with the traffic group was that the different types of approaches you can do are appropriate for different pavements. And we have had some training recently, actually, by a couple of the professors came down to train not only us as planning and engineering staff, but also our street crewmen on the different types of cracking that's out there, because there are certain maintenance techniques that are appropriate for certain types of distresses. And importantly, there are different triggers. For example, if you have a road that's between 70 and 90, a slurry seal can actually extend its life, besides just making it a better road to drive on. And once you get below 40, you're looking at major rehabilitation and reconstruction, which is admittedly much more expensive. So we're very familiar with this concept. I left this the same. This is the one that we showed the traffic group. We are going to make a few adjustments now. For example, Gonai Road still shows up as red here. We're going to adjust that, and same with Lampa there for our improvements. But I wanted to show you what we had shared with the traffic group. There will be a few things that'll look better, and there'll be a few things that'll look worse with the passage of time. But as you can see, about a quarter of our roads are currently in good to satisfactory. Majority are in fair to poor, and the red are in the very poor to serious and fail category. And indeed, for example, Appian Way showed up in that very poor category, and now that section will be much better. With the existing revenue sources that we have, the current gas tax, sales tax, and of course this could, this will vary with the amount of gas sold. We had to make assumptions for relatively level amounts of funding. If you use the pavement management system, do what the engineering recommendations are, you'd be able to treat about 35 miles of road over the next 10 years, which unfortunately is only about 13% of the roads. And noting those are not complete reconstructions, those are just various treatment types that are appropriate for the conditions of those roads. But using our existing resources, we're looking at only about 13% of our roads that we can even address in the next 10 years or so. By 2017, we think that our overall average weighted, pavement condition index for the city will be about 59, 60 is shown on here. With those projects I just showed you, even if you follow the recommendations of the pavement management system, we're looking at approximately 20-point decline over the next 10 years in the overall condition of our roads. And that, unfortunately, that 39 is significant because that means that as an overall average, we're in the very poor category. The expectation for the conditions of our streets, if we were to implement those road projects with the available resources, is that the vast majority of our roads within the next 10 years from now would be in the very poor, serious, and failed condition. We would still have some roads that were, in the fair category and good category, but for the most part, we are very much aware that the condition of our roads are declining, and they are anticipated to continue to decline with our current available resources. The pavement management system can be used to look at all sorts of different things. This is a tool. We can look at different functional classes. We can separate out the arterials and collectors from the locals. We can look at different treatment types. Do we want to focus on reconstruction or on more global treatments, more sealings? And we looked at, just as a couple examples that we showed the traffic group, what if we do what's called the stopgap, or do the worst first? And we also looked at weighting the money for the arterials and collectors based on traffic. Unfortunately, the worst first approach, as we expected, was not beneficial, because if you're chasing your worst roads only while you're fixing your worst road, which is the most expensive road to fix, you're letting many other roads continue to deteriorate. So that was not beneficial. The other thing we looked at was the local roads are about 70%, the arterial and collector streets are about 70% of the traffic, even though they're only about 30% of the roads, because the arterials and collectors carry a lot more traffic. So we looked at an option where we would send more money over the next 10 years to the arterial and collector streets based on proportion of traffic. And what we found was that, indeed, if you did that, you would have a differentiation of slightly better arterial and collector streets, where most of the traffic is, but you'd still see an overall decline in both of those categories. We also did share with traffic, to show what the impact would be, is what would happen if you did have an additional $4 million a year and let the system run to say, what could you improve? The difference is significant. Instead of being able to address 35 miles of road, or 13% of our roads, we'd be able to address about 100 miles of our roads if we were to follow that. And of course, there would be adjustments over time and project selection, but that's about 37% of our system. That would mean that obviously if you have more money, you're able to fix more roads. As I mentioned previously, we do have some additional funds available this year because bids did come in well. This road, actually, you can see the alligator cracking. I mean, you can't go very far on this road without hitting a crack in the road. This is a piece of Sonoma Street just east of Solomon. This is a connection into that neighborhood. There are a few ways in, and this is one that was actually identified by our inspectors about 5 years ago when we were doing our slurry seal down in that neighborhood as a road that was failing pretty quickly. So, and as you can see, it only has a rating of 35 out of 100. We've actually now designed this project. It's a relatively small project in the neighborhood of $200,000, but we'll be able to put that out to bid this year with available resources, because we did have favorable bids on our other projects this year. So we're very, very happy to be able to do an additional project. Another thing we discussed with the traffic group was safety issues. A lot of projects we do have safety implications. Downtown is a huge one. While we redid the infrastructure down there are big safety improvements there. That happens with a lot of projects that we do. But we are unfortunately seeing an increase locally, statewide, and nationally in traffic crashes and safety issues. And we were identifying some areas that we're going to look at for potential safety improvements. Some had more reactions than others with the traffic group, as you might imagine. And I can tell you that the one in the upper right portion there, Fairview Drive and Gordon Street, unfortunately, we had 3 pedestrian incidents there in the last 2 years. And unfortunately, the one that happened in March of this year was a fatality. We moved as quick as we could on that one, and we did have, there were lighting issues there, and we did work with NV Energy and Slot World ownership and we've already installed 2 new streetlights there to improve that situation. We trimmed the trees, did some improvements to the painting and signage as well. So just to mention, we already did accomplish something at that location. But I can tell you that I don't know those dots at Stewart Street and Little Lane. We've already started talking. While Stewart Street is a city-owned road now, and it is our responsibility, we do have significant state offices there and pedestrian traffic, and we have been receiving some concerns from state employees, and we are working to discuss that further with NDOT staff, because we do have a whole building full of engineers, including safety engineers and traffic engineers that we're consulting with to look at potential improvements there. Allocation of funds in future years. As I mentioned, there's a lot of different alternatives, whether it be type of road, type of improvements to do. We don't have enough funds to satisfy all of our needs. We had informed traffic that we were going to seek their input regardless of the outcome of the November ballot measure. We know that the results of that now. It was not successful. So we are looking forward to talking to them further about allocation of resources. We did do an exercise. I'm going to show you the results in a moment as far as allocation of resources. But now we need to actually talk about firming up our plans going forward and actually talking about project selection for the next fiscal year as well. Our next meeting of the traffic group is Tuesday, November 29th, because the fourth Thursday this month is Thanksgiving. We're meeting on Tuesday, November 29th at 5:30 p.m. here in this room. That meeting is open to the public. And I'll just note that we did go through an exercise with the traffic group in August and had them allocate resources. I know it adds up to 99, rounding and all that good stuff, but they did indicate a preference for expending money on arterial and collector streets, over the maintenance of the local streets, but local streets are still there in their rankings. And additionally, they did identify the need to expend, resources on safety-specific improvements, as well as sidewalk improvements, because sidewalks are definitely used in this town, and they are an important asset that we need to maintain, and they are a safety and liability issue as well, as I mentioned previously. And with that, I will take any questions.
Question, go ahead. Let's just jump in. Go.
Patrick, we had given staff direction back when the traffic group was formed as an advisory group to come back at the end of the year with a recommendation whether you want to continue with this group or not. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us where you're kind of headed with that?
Yes, sir. Yes, the RTC direction had said that we should come back in December, and that's exactly what we will be doing. We discussed this with RTC at the November meeting, and I have spoken to several of the traffic members who have indicated a desire to potentially keep meeting, but not on a monthly basis, but potentially on a quarterly basis. We believe that it's imperative to keep promoting our transparency and to keep both, have the two-way street open there to both educate folks, share with people what's going on, answer questions, but also to seek their input, because we're definitely operating in an environment where we don't have enough money to maintain what we have, and we want to get their input to help us prioritize what's most important to our community. And while I don't think we need to meet on a monthly basis to do that, I think that quarterly may be appropriate, and I'm going to discuss that with the traffic group when we meet on the 29th. And then I'll report back to the RTC in December.
Patrick, from your perspective, help me understand how you justify new development when we don't have enough money to take care of the roads that we have. I mean, are HOAs the way to go? What's your thought process with regards to this?
Certainly not a entirely straightforward answer, but different developments have different characteristics. For example, we've had developments recently that have, I'll just use Mills Landing as an option, as one example. That one has already been approved. That one, for example, it has different characteristics in that it is denser and also has relatively narrower roadways that cost less to maintain. So while they will be city-maintained roadways, that is a benefit as far as development goes, to that it has a reduced cost. Because of course those residents will be buying gas and contributing sales tax, and there will be revenue. There are other proposals out there for for developments that will have privately owned roads, which of course benefits us in that the city doesn't have to pay. But the bottom line is that overall, we know we've done the math, and that overall, when an average development in the past has come in, the revenue generated that goes to the actual maintenance of roads is not sufficient to cover the long-term maintenance. And the solution to that, as an overall picture, I'm not suggesting that all the roads should be private in subdivisions, but I think the answer to that would have to be some future change in some funding that would allow for that to not be an increasing burden as we go forward, to further put us, behind the 8 ball.
And then the second question I have is with regards to crack repair. Since I walk large areas, I noticed that areas that were crack-filled seem to have a tendency to re-crack in the same location after perhaps 2 years, not very long. So is there a system improvement that can prevent that so that you're not constantly chasing the same cracks?
Well, yeah, it is absolutely a challenge. We have in the past gone out and we've done our crack filling in tandem with slurry seal program, and that is desirable when that is appropriate, to go out and do the crack fill and do the slurry seal over the top, because then you're actually covering that over. But even that, even though it's more desirable, even that doesn't last an extremely long period of time. And we do have some folks that we've been, that we try to be responsive to requests, and we do agree that it's good to keep the water out of the cracks when you can, but the cracks are multiplying at a rate that indeed there's a challenge of, you want to fill the cracks and you want to keep the water out, but it's not going to last forever. So that's why, for example, for the wide crack repair project, we didn't just go fill the cracks with tar. We cut them out and we repaved. But yeah, so crack filling is a useful tool. It's good for certain things, but we totally recognize its limitations, and you need to make more significant repairs. But oftentimes, we don't have the appropriate amount of funds, and we do get some comments from residents that resident A might call and say, "Could you please replace my road today?" And we say, "Unfortunately, we don't have the funds." And they say, "Well, could you please at least fill the cracks?" And we recognize that is a good thing to do, but the next day, resident B might call and say, why'd you fill those cracks? You need to rebuild the road, unfortunately. And we try to educate people as best we can.
Mr. Mayor, could I point one thing out before public comment? Patrick, could you go to the fuel tax revenue slide, not the gallons sold, but the actual revenue slide? So, Mr. Mayor, I just want to point out that we're going to, especially in light of the fuel revenue index or failing on the ballot, I think we really have to pursue an all of the above strategy. Number one, we've got to be extremely effective at how we plan the current dollars that we do have available. So partly using the traffic members and using our pavement management system, I think we'll be able to program the available dollars more effectively and more efficiently. I think also within the streets division, we have to be more efficient about how we do spend all those dollars, to include the crack sealing and the wide crack sealing programs. But that only gets you so far. We could be 100% more efficient in how we execute the available budget. That still is only going to get you about a third of the way that you need to be in terms of annual road maintenance funding. So we're crunching the numbers real tightly here, and we're using the traffic members to help us. But I think the third component of that all of the above strategy is, at some point there is going to be a new revenue source required, and we have to be honest about it. If you look back at our slide here, in 2005, if I paid $1 for something, that same item, based on the inflation calculator on the U.S. government website, that same item would cost me $1.24 today. So it's taken us 10 years. We still have not recovered the revenue that we had 11 years ago. And those dollars in 2016 are worth almost a quarter less than what they were back when we hit kind of the high point of our fuel tax revenue. So at some point, we have to be honest, we're either going to accept the condition of the roads and we're going to be okay with it, or I do believe there is going to be another revenue source that's going to be required to get the roads to a more acceptable condition. So as we work through the budget process over the next 6 months or so, we're going to sharpen the pencils on what the requirement is, and we're going to bring some alternatives to you for your consideration.
Well, Nick, thank you for the input on the tracking of the dollars. Are we going to separate how we spend money on snow removal, street sweeping, and other aspects of where that tax dollars go?
Yes, sir, we are. So within, and that was based on one of your requests. So we're going to track within our streets division all the hours that they spend on the various activities, everything from curb repair to snow removal. So we'll track those numbers, and that's part of being more efficient at how we spend our current dollars and having more transparency in it.
And if you're looking for more revenue, are you suggesting that we're going to have another tax somewhere along the line, or just another funding source? How would we accomplish?
There's going to need to be another funding source of some kind. And I want to be able, my job is to present alternatives to you. So obviously, you could raid the general fund. That's one option. There are other options as well. But, I mean, my job is to give you alternatives. But certainly one of, an additional revenue could be on the table in terms of an alternative.
I thought your job was to get it fixed.
Well, that too, Mr. Mayor.
We do have public comment. We're just going to it right now.
So a couple of things. I know that I've had some conversations with people after the downtown corridor redesign that they are experiencing some traffic issues as far as left turns off of Carson Street onto 5th Street, Washington Street, Robinson Street. And I'm wondering if at some point in time we are not going to have to look at installing left turn arrows at those intersections, because it's causing traffic to back up if you're trying to make a left turn off of Carson Street. So that, and if we are experiencing problems and issues with maintaining the current roads that we have, then I too can share Supervisor Abboud's concerns about any new development. And perhaps when you are looking at approving new developments, that I believe my friend Craig Davis suggested an impact fee to the builder, the developer, to cover some of the cost of not only, I'm sure, the initial street installation, but any ongoing maintenance. And I don't know, obviously you can't charge the developer after the initial subdivision is completed, but some sort of impact fee to the developer to at least set aside some amount of money as a maintenance pot, if you will, which we don't currently have with the current streets that we are looking at trying to maintain. But for future development, that's something that may need to be considered. That's all I have on that.
If you had a choice between, Hope, if you had a choice between an impact fee for another fire station or a road, what would you pick?
If I had a choice to make, wow. I would say road maintenance is an important piece of this project, or of this issue, because we are in such sad straits with that. And I know I live in the Northridge subdivision, and they did a lot of crack repair around my area. There is still a ton of roads in that subdivision that do need a lot of work, as well as some sidewalk issues, which I find about 6 o'clock in the morning when it's dark and I'm walking my dog, and I forget that there's that one section of sidewalk on North Ridge Drive that's raised about 3 inches and end up almost taking a header. But, you know, fortunately at the last minute, I remember that it's there and managed to avoid, you know, doing a face plant. But I would say if you were looking at safety, then obviously the fire station would be a priority. But again, I think an impact fee to the developer would cover part of the building of a new fire station if you're looking at putting in a new subdivision such as the Lampa Ranch development, that there should be an impact fee to the developer to cover the cost of an initial installation of a fire station. If they are that interested in doing that development and they're going to be getting a crap ton of money for whatever they're selling, then an impact fee would make no never mind to them. From my perspective, and probably not from theirs because it cuts into their profits. But I think if you're looking at doing future development and the Lampa Ranch, and, you know, God help us if you approve the Vintage at Kings Canyon, you know my thoughts about that, then I think impact fees are the way to go.
Okay. Brad, go.
I appreciate your question, Mayor, but I think that's an oversimplification because it's not just roads versus fire. You also have schools in there, and there's other potential areas of the city that could benefit from impact fees. I would note, though, that developers typically build the roads and dedicate them to the city, so there's no cost to the city typically for the roads in a development. Initially, it's the maintenance that they have to take care of, and that's obviously what we just heard is an issue. My thought is we just heard that we need to be spending approximately 8 times the money that we currently have to do basic maintenance on our streets. So my question to the public is, do you want to pay that money? Do you want to fix the streets? That's what I think we need to be talking about.
And just as a comment, I don't know if Hope remembers or not, but on the Lampa project, the board did assess a $1,000 fee for impacts. We didn't make the determination of what we were going to use it for yet because the highest priority will be determined at that time, but we did assess a $1,000 impact fee for that.
Yeah, I didn't mean to short shrift all the other things that go along with the discussion on impact fees, but because I understand what you folks are all saying on that. I'll just leave it with that. All right. Any other questions? Any other public comment? Okay. This is no action item. You want to take? We'll take a break here in a minute. Let's see what we got next here. Bond counsel. Why don't we just take a break and we'll come back and do bond. We'll be in recess for 10 minutes. We'll come back and do bond counsel. Okay, we're going to bring the meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order. We're now at item number 12. This is to confirm the engagement of Sherman and Howard's bond counsel for the QECB agreement. Ms. Paulson, do you want to take us through why we're doing this and what's going on here?
Good morning, Nancy Paulson, Chief Financial Officer, and I have John Peterson here from J&A Consulting, which he doesn't have anything to do with this item, but then I have Ryan Henry here from Sherman and Howard. So this item is to confirm the engagement of Sherman and Howard as bond counsel in connection with the issuance of 2 installment purchase agreements to finance the cost of energy savings performance contract that will be funded by guaranteed energy savings. The costs for the engagement are $35,000 to $38,000 for the Qualified Energy Conservation Bond, or QECB agreement, and $30,000 to $35,000 for the tax exempt agreement.
Questions? We need bond counsel to do these things, and Sherman Howard's usually always been there with us, so. Anybody? Public comment? Motion's in order.
I move to confirm the engagement of Sherman and Howard as bond counsel to Carson City, Nevada in connection with the issuance of 2 installment purchase agreements, the QECB agreement in the maximum principal amount of $3,101,538 and the tax exempt agreement in the maximum principal amount of $1,175,000 in order to finance all or a portion of the cost to acquire, improve, and equip building projects as defined in NRS 244A.019.
Second.
Motion and second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. I think it was unanimous, right? Okay, 12B. This is potential discussion of the installment acquisition. Go.
So this is to introduce on first reading an ordinance authorizing the issuance of installment purchase agreements for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, improving, and equipping building projects, and authorizing the execution of the agreements and other documents related to the agreements. Just about a month ago, the city was awarded an allocation of $3.1 million in QECBs from the state, which those provide for an interest subsidy from the federal government to reduce the cost of debt service. So as a result, the city is proposing to enter into an installment purchase agreement in the maximum principal amount of $3,101,538 for the QECB agreement to finance a portion of various energy efficiency improvements to build city buildings, each of which is a qualified conservation purpose as defined by the federal tax code. In addition, the city proposes to enter into another installment purchase agreement in the maximum principal amount of $1,175,000. That's called the tax exempt agreement to finance the remaining portion of the projects. At this point, the city has met all the requirements of NRS to include approval by the Debt Management Commission and the Department of Taxation in order to proceed with the issuance of the installment purchase agreements. And I have John Peterson here, and he'll go into more detail about the financing.
Good morning. Thank you, Nancy. For the record, John Peterson, J&A Consulting Group. And really just to follow up on what Nancy said, this is kind of the culmination of a months-long process. As you may recall, we came to the board in June to officially begin the process for the financing on this. In terms of the project with these energy improvements, that actually started last year. I believe back in October was the first action with the board. So we're glad to get to this point. But as Nancy pointed out, we've come to the board before. We've gone to the Debt Management Commission of the county. We've received our approval from Department of Taxation. And the other thing I wanted to bring up was that we have also sent out an RFP for the financing. So we sent that out to financial institutions. Well over a dozen or more banks received this. We ended up receiving 6 responses for the financing. When we were evaluating the responses, it appears that the best response in terms of interest rate, as well as conforming with the requested terms, came from Bank of America. They were what we consider the best responder. And maybe I'll just give a little bit of detail on the terms that they proposed. And some of this is included in the backup to the board briefing paper. But for the tax exempt obligation, again, there are 2, and there are 2 separate interest rates for each a separate interest rate for each obligation. The tax-exempt interest rate is 2.19%, proposed by B of A. That rate is locked from them. That rate will not change. Before the meeting came back to order, I was having a discussion with Supervisor Bonkowski over the last let's just say the last 10 days, interest rates in the market have spiked quite a bit. So even though those rates have changed, the rate for the tax-exempt obligation will not change, assuming that we move forward and close on this financing in December. The proposal from Bank of America for the taxable or the QECB obligation at that time on November 1st when we got their bid was a 4.14%. Effective interest rate. That rate is not locked at this time, and I'll explain why we didn't lock it in just a second. That rate will fluctuate up until when we actually lock it, assuming we proceed at this point and we have adoption at the meeting in December. We will lock that rate on December 2nd. Getting back to why we didn't lock this. So as Nancy mentioned, we get a federal subsidy from the Treasury to pay the interest on this bond. So 4.14% sounds pretty high. However, when we took the subsidy into account, the effective rate that the city would pay was actually 1.21% on that on this taxable deal. So a very good interest rate, much lower actually than the tax exempt rate. Normally you don't see taxable rates lower than tax exempt, but because of the subsidy we do. Because interest rates have gone up, the estimate today is that the effective tax, or the rate from B of A is a 4.5%. This is as of yesterday. However, the subsidy that we also receive has gone up as well. That subsidy rate is set by the Treasury every morning, so that subsidy rate has gone up as well. And so the net change really from November 1st to today, and again, where we've seen a huge spike in interest rates, we've gone from a 1.21 effective interest rate to a 1.31% effective interest rate. So we've seen rates go up 40 basis points, but our net effective change is only 10 basis points. And in terms of the backup to this item, we're doing this project because the energy savings are greater than the debt service. And even with this, 10 basis point change in interest rates, I have no crystal ball in terms of what things are going to do in the next couple of weeks. But even with that interest rate adjustment, we still have savings every year. And effectively, we're kind of getting these projects for free. If you think about it, you're reducing your utility costs on one side, but you have a debt or a debt payment on the other. The city's better off putting these projects in. So we still think it's a good idea to proceed with this. I don't know how much detail you want me to get into in terms of which energy cost or which energy projects will be funded by each agreement. There's a tax exempt agreement and a taxable agreement. But they will be separate, so we'll have that all divvied up, and we will use every penny of that federal subsidy bond that we can, because the interest rate is just so awesome. But I'll just pause right there and see if there are any questions.
Yeah, there is. Let me ask, Lori's got a question. Let me ask a question, follow up on that. I've got a couple here. There's the underlying agreement to when we go to construct the energy savings improvements. Our agreement with that developer provides that their payment will come out of the energy savings. Is that right or wrong? It'll come out of the.
This money.
It'll come out of this money.
This money pays them.
Yes, it'll come out of the issuance of the installment purchase agreements.
But they guarantee that our energy savings will be sufficient to cover debt service.
That's correct.
And if they don't, if it doesn't meet the debt service, what happens then?
They will make up the difference to make the debt service payments.
Right. Then, John, the question I have to you, and probably more esoteric and continuing education for me, we should, Adriana, I think I got in the wrong business. I should have been going down somewhere else. Does the bond that we sell have a better interest rate because it not only has, it's got some federal attributes to it, but it's got city attributes to it, and it's also got a guarantee by the underlying developer?
John Peterson for the record. I definitely think the federal attribute of this is just incredible. I mean, again, bringing down for 20-year money, this is a 20-year borrowing on this QECB, getting that for 1.3%, rough numbers, it's just an incredible deal. So we'd be hard pressed to pass that up. Maybe one distinction I want to make, though, is that the guarantee from the contractor isn't legally pledged to pay this obligation. So that's an agreement between the city and the contractor, Amoresco. And then the financing is a separate item, but we've tied the numbers together so that they work.
And again, Nancy, why don't we do that? I mean, what's the rationale for not tying it as part of the security for the bond?
I'd like to answer that if I could. I don't believe that legally we can.
Because it would mean that it's a private developer getting it?
No, it's just more what revenues of the city were legally allowed to pledge to a bond. Ryan can step in with more detail if he likes, but generally the state limits what revenues you can pledge to a bond, and these type of energy savings from Amoresco are not included in that list of things that we can pledge.
Ryan, I apologize for going down this, I don't call it rabbit hole, I just want to know, tell me about it, why?
Yes, good morning. For the record, Ryan Henry from Sherman and Howard. Mayor, the reason that this is structured in this specific manner is because Chapter 350 authorizes the city to enter into an installment purchase agreement. And part of that transaction is that the installment purchase agreement be paid from any legally available funds, but also that the lender take a security interest in the equipment that's financed. And so, you know, the collateral for this agreement is the equipment itself. And another key component to this that I want to point out is that because it's an installment purchase agreement, the way this is structured is that it's subject to annual appropriation. So in the event that the city was unable to pay and were to decide not to appropriate, the lender could then come in and repossess the equipment. And you know, that's just kind of the basic structure of an installment financing. But under Chapter 350, there is an authorization to specifically pledge this guarantee as collateral. That's under a different chapter of the NRS. And as John pointed out, the energy performance contract itself is separate from our financing agreement.
Okay, Lori then Brad.
Good morning. So it's on page 228 of my packet, but in general, it may require Public Works. On the issuance of the certificate, that was on October 18th, 2016, says that we have 6 months. We have to utilize at least 10% of the bonding authority, or we lose the remaining amount of the bond. And so that gives us till April then of 2017. Can you remind me of, are we going to meet the 10% fast enough before we issue this bond?
Tom, this is Tom Grundy with Carson City Public Works. We will meet that fast.
What project are we going to be able to, it's on the Qualified Energy Conservation Certificate. And the conditions of that certificate that we receive says we have to spend 10% of the bonding authority within 6 calendar months of the certificate date, shall void the use of any unused portion. And so I wanted to ensure we're going to meet that condition. It's 228 of our packet.
Ryan, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but the 10% rule is tied to rules for with the U.S. Treasury for what we call tax advantage financing, and that's what this is generally that you have to spend 10% within 6 months. Right. There are other spending thresholds. Generally, however, the way that 10% is written is that it's 10% from the date that the obligation is issued, not 10% from the date of the certificate. So maybe
it says certificate date specifically. I'm just reading what the actual contract from the Office of the Director from Business and Industry. It says the certificate date, which is the reason I'm asking the question. And as long as we have a project that's going to be $300,000 worth or something within the
We have a
time
short
frame.
overview presentation. Can we, if we could just roll that, I think you'll be comfortable.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
You want Brett?
He's going to roll us.
Okay, you're going to do the presentation right now. Good. Okay, fine. Go.
Yeah. For the record, Tom Grundy with Carson City Public Works. Yeah, and I just have a quick overview presentation of the project. And this is from the project development side. So that's what I'm focusing on. I'll talk a little bit, just a quick overview of what energy performance contracting is, progress to date, the schedule moving forward, what energy conservation measures we're going to do that's, you've seen a number of those matrices, and, as we go through this project and find out interest rates and things like that, so that's kind of been a dynamic thing. So, and then a summary of the energy conservation measures, and lastly, savings in environmental comparisons. So, energy performance contracting, it's a design-build strategy that uses guaranteed energy savings to pay for the cost of the project. So the company who we've contracted with to do this, they guarantee we will save X dollars, and that's what we use to pay the debt service. And like Ryan said, we started out on this back in October of last year, and we went through, doing the financial grade audit we looked at the buildings and saw what energy improvements could be done, and then how much they would save, looked at our current energy uses, and went through this audit process. And we finally got the 100% audit on November 3rd, shortly after we were awarded the $3 million in qualified energy conservation bonds. And once we knew what our interest rate would be, then we could know how big of a project we could do. Up until that point, we didn't know how big a project we could do because we didn't know how much money we had to spend. An important part of this is the project has to be cash flow neutral for the entire period. So cash flow neutral or cash flow positive. So, next board meeting, you'll be seeing the actual energy performance contract with a couple other items related to this project. By the end of December, we have to submit the executed performance contract to the Governor's Office of Energy. And when we do that, we will get the $76,000 that we paid for the financial grade operational audit back. So notice to proceed will be in February. Design review, permitting, material procurement will start in February. Actual construction will start in June. So, but we'll be procuring materials before that. And construction will go on through October, where we plan to have the punch list ready by October. And then final project closeout will be the end of October. And this matrix you've seen several times. This is the final matrix now that we know basically how much money we have to spend. So, and the big thing that the qualified energy conservation bonds got us was install new variable air volume air conditioning supply unit with reheat system at City Hall. That was something we really wanted to get into the project all along, because the HVAC system at City Hall has, it's old, and the configuration of City Hall has changed dramatically over the years. And so this will take care of most of the issues associated with that. Doing some new boilers at the Aquatic Center and a new boiler at City Hall. A lot of building energy controls, so it's easier for our maintenance staff to control the energy in the buildings. Some building envelope improvements, weather stripping, caulking around windows, destratification fans at the aquatic facility to keep the hot air from just sitting up in the high ceilings and push the hot air back down. And this is kind of a summary of everything. We looked at 29 facilities. We're doing interior and exterior lighting retrofits in 21 of those facilities. Like I said, new boilers at City Hall and the Aquatic Center. Energy management and system upgrades just about everywhere. City Hall retrofit, and energy usage monitoring. That's what the building dynamics line is. So, so the project savings and environmental equivalencies. To me, if you tell me we'll save 100 kilowatt hours of electricity, I don't know what that means. So right now we spend about $1.1 million on electricity and natural gas. The annual energy savings will be about $193,000, and that's the first year. We're assuming a 2.94% increase in energy costs annually, so that savings will will step up over as time goes along. So that's a 17.5% reduction in energy costs. Electricity usage will be about 2 million kilowatt hours annually, or about a 25% reduction in energy use. Natural gas consumption will decrease by 65,000 therms a year, about 20%. And there's about $15,000 worth of maintenance savings in there due to longer life equipment. LEDs, you know, we're putting in a lot of LEDs, and LEDs last a whole lot longer than fluorescent tubes. So there's going to be maintenance savings due to that. And those were the only maintenance savings we counted in the project. You know, there's a new boiler is going to take less maintenance and less time for our maintenance staff. But we didn't put a number to that and include that in this project. So if you look at that in terms of greenhouse gas equivalents, that energy savings between the electricity and the gas is equivalent to removing about 376 cars off of the road, or not burning 200,000 gallons of gasoline, or it's about the CO2 emissions of 188 houses. So it's significant, or by not felling 535 tons of waste. So that's what it kind of puts it in more understandable terms.
So Supervisor Bagwell, back to your question. So we would, with this schedule that we showed, we would probably make easily our first payment in March to Amoresco. So that's going to be within that 6-month window.
But is it going to be 10%? Because
Well, the majority of this cost, remember, is going to be equipment. And so when that equipment gets approved and gets ordered, they're going to be asking for a portion of that cost for that equipment. It's not, I mean, once they install it, then they'll get the remainder. But so we'll be making a payment there once they'll turn it into us for review. We'll review it, buy off on it, they order it, they get hit with that bill, we have to pay for a portion of that.
Can I just see the date one again? I just want to make sure and which pieces is coming out of which money and which ones do. And if everyone tells me you don't have any problem and you'll make it all work, because the project agreement is December, the notice to proceed doesn't even happen until February. Design review permitting is February 6th. So you're saying if they get their order in quick enough, we can get an invoice done before April 17th.
We're comfortable with that.
Okay, I just don't want to avoid anything, go, oh, this didn't work. Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Bagwell, John Peterson for the record, if I may. I believe that the sentence we're looking at here needs to be read in conjunction with the following sentence afterwards, where it says, please submit a written notice and copy of the IRS Form 8038 to the Department of Business Industry within 15 days of issuance of the obligations. I think the wording in the first sentence maybe is kind of confusing. Two separate ideas. I think they want to have confirmation that we actually issued an obligation within 6 months of them awarding this to us. Otherwise, we'd have to kick it back, because this 8038 is done at the time we issue the obligation. So that's going to be done in December. So I honestly believe that this 10% that they're talking about is saying that we issued at least 10% of the bond within 6 months. And so I don't think it has anything to do with the construction proceeds. But again, I think maybe they have kind of two separate ideas that are being jumbled into one. But the whole idea is that we're issuing the obligation within 6 months. We're not just asking for it and then sitting on it for a year. Yeah.
So I'd like to make a couple of points here. First of all, that most, if not all, of the work that's being done through this agreement are items that are currently on our CIP list. So this is not a matter of doing this work because we're doing this agreement. We have to do this work regardless. What we have in front of us is an agreement that allows us to do that work basically at no cost to the city. So I look at this agreement and I'm wondering how we can do more of these, because it would really help clean up some stuff off of our CIP list. We're replacing boilers, we're replacing HVAC units. Those things, we're not just buying something, we're buying a capital improvement that has a lifespan of anywhere from 10 to 30 years. And these are all items that we're going to have to replace anyway. So I see this as, Mr. Rotter sitting in the back there, this is the kickoff to his asset management program. It's phase one, where we are replacing boilers, we're replacing HVAC, we're putting in high-efficiently lighting systems, we're putting in programmable thermostats, which not only reduces the utilities that the city uses, but allows us to cross a lot of things off our CIP list without having to use any of our own money to do it.
And maybe you can speak to one, because I did get some questions in the community or some comments that we were replacing a boiler that didn't need replacement, that it hadn't reached its useful life, and this was a waste. So can you speak to that boiler, that it actually needs replacement?
Yeah, Tom Grundy for the record with Carson City Public Works. The boilers we're replacing are the boilers at the Aquatic Center and the boiler at City Hall. And both of those boilers are antiquated. I believe they can't even get parts for the City Hall boiler anymore. All those boilers are in pretty poor shape.
Okay, other questions of the board? Public comment, anybody? Okay. Motion's in order.
Bill number?
115, sorry.
I move to introduce on first reading Bill number 115, an ordinance authorizing installment purchase agreements for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, improving, and equipping building projects, and authorizing the execution of the agreements and other documents related to the agreements.
Second.
The motion and second. On the motion, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay. Well done so far. Take up the last
All
one.
right.
All right.
This item is to adopt a resolution to establish the Carson City, Nevada Green Community Program. The purpose of a green community program is to promote energy conservation, energy efficiency, or environmental conservation. The Internal Revenue Code authorizes the city to issue the QECBs for qualified conservation purposes. And a qualified conservation purpose includes capital expenditures incurred for the purposes of implementing green community programs. The city's program will consist of the projects that we just discussed in the prior item.
Questions of the board? Public comment? Anybody? Seeing none, motion's in order. Supervisor Abel, go.
Resolution number?
2016 R28.
I move to adopt resolution number 2016 R28, a resolution evidencing and describing the Carson City, Nevada Green Community Program.
Motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you. Well done. Good expenditure of funds that we're going to get back. Thanks. Okay. All right. Nancy, any questions of Nancy on the statement of condition of each fund? Public, anybody? Motion's in order.
I move to accept the report on, did you have a comment?
No, she was going to do the motion.
Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead.
I'm sorry. I move to accept the report on the condition of each fund in the Treasury and the statements of receipts and expenditures through November 4th, 2016, per NRS 251.030 and NRS 354.290.
Motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you, Nancy. Well done.
We're quick today.
We're quick. All right. We're now going to recess as the Board of Supervisors, and I'm going to turn the gavel over to Supervisor Abad, who's the Chair of the Redevelopment Authority, and we already have had that in place, so it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Redevelopment Authority and let the record reflect that we have a quorum, and open this up with public comment. Is there any public comment? Seeing none. Move on to item number 16, approval of the minutes of August 18th, 2016.
I move to approve the minutes of the Carson City Redevelopment Authority for August 18th, 2016 as presented.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That passes. On to item number 17, community development and planning. Lee, are you going to take us through this?
Good morning. I'll give a summary. Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. This item on the Redevelopment Authority agenda is for possible action to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors regarding the expenditure of $750 from this fiscal year's redevelopment revolving fund to support the 2016 Santa Parade special event downtown. So this item, just a little bit of background on this, the initial round of special events each year, as you know, comes through at the start before the fiscal year in May, and at that time, a total of $60,000 was allocated in this year's budget to special events, but only $33,000 was allocated to actual events, so that there is currently $27,000 available in the special event fund. Redevelopment Authority policies and procedures adopted by you and the Board of Supervisors provide that applications may be submitted on a first-come, first-served basis through the year as long as funds remain. So the Redevelopment Authority received this application for $750 for the Santa Parade, specifically for advertising purposes as part of it. Doreen Mack is here representing the applicant. In your packet are the review criteria from the policies and procedures that you're to look at and consider when considering funding for all special events. The Redevelopment Authority earlier this month, at the beginning of this month, reviewed the application as they do, and they make a recommendation to the Redevelopment Authority. In their review of it and consideration, their vote and recommendation was to deny the proposed expenditure, and that vote was approved by 6-0. And as I note in here, without representing specific RAC members' thoughts on it, the recommendation generally was to deny based on the belief that the newspaper ad is not a necessary expense to advertise this event, and that the event draws relatively few people relative to the proposed expenditure. So that's the basis for their recommendation. In your proposed motion, as written, it is move to approve the recommendation. Obviously, if we were to follow the RAC's recommendation, you would modify that motion to deny it. But that's kind of a summary of where we are, and the application material itself, the applicant can represent that, is here, and the staff report's included, so I'll just be available for questions at this point.
Lee, has anything changed from the RAC meeting to this meeting in terms of the material presented?
No, you've been forwarded the application where there's no new information.
With that, I'll open it to the board.
I personally am very hesitant to go against a 6-0 vote from an advisory committee. I assume that they vetted this. I would say to Doreen that I'd be happy, if you can raise half the funds, I'd be happy to match it.
Good morning, Board. This is an event that I have done for years, and it has expanded to include the veterans. I started this last year to include them. It's a local event. I have not gone bigger with this because I want to keep it for our community. I attended a veteran event last week at my granddaughter's daycare that included all these kids, and the reaction and the interaction that they had with the veterans was just absolutely phenomenal. It's the same thing that we'll be creating at this event here. We became a 501c3 this year in July. Our funding is very minimal, and we need time to actually raise funds. This used to be way back when, something that I've done for many years, but you used to support this, and at that time, I would do a double truck ad, and it was $2,000. So I feel that this is a minimal fee to ask for. I will certainly raise, do what we can for the other to bring some money into it, but we have paid for, we'll have little flags that we're dispersing out to the veterans, and it's just I just can't express this enough. I had a man, it's only 2 blocks long, and it's small because it allows for the children, grandparents, parents, and handicapped people to participate in this. I had a gentleman come up to me last year in a wheelchair that said he was a veteran and it was the funnest event that he's ever attended. Unfortunately, he died 6 months later. So I stand before you to ask for some help and funding to promote this event to help encourage our community to all participate. Thank you.
And Doreen, you and I have conversed via email, and I have talked to the Visitors Bureau, so I'm hoping that you're engaging with them on promoting this.
I did,
Because
and
they will
they
do
did.
that. Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yeah.
Good. Any other board discussion?
So we did hear this at RAC, and it was unanimous to deny the application. And so I'll speak for myself, and part of that denial is I just didn't feel that the application meets the goals and objective of redevelopment. Not that it isn't a nice event or special, but it's not the purpose of the redevelopment dollars. It's to bring business downtown. I mean, and to spread stuff in there. So you are in a 2-block radius. It was 200 participants, and the expenditure was not justified. So that's the reason for the denial, not that the project isn't special for the community or the veterans or anyone else. So I just want to go on the record to say it just doesn't meet the project goals for RAC.
May I address, am I off? I'm off, I'm on now.
You weren't there. I know you sent someone else that night to represent
I did, because I went to Karen's fundraiser.
But anyway.
But yes.
I just wanted to let you know.
The other thing is that it does support the community. It supports the businesses from Telegraph Square to Curry Street, down Main Street. That block of area is where our retail businesses are. And that was when I started this years ago, was the purpose of that. And I was asked if I could do something, and this is in 2009, to bridge that gap between the City Tree and Telegraph Square, because we were losing people coming, attending to the Christmas tree lighting. So I created this event back then to support the businesses. And they all truly appreciate it, because they don't get the recognition being on Curry Street as they would if they were on Main Street. And all the businesses on Main Street all participate in this, and Curry.
Bob?
All meetings batch.
It's done. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you. Motion, second. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Can I ask you what I do next? Do I?
See us afterwards, we'll write you a check.
Okay. Thank you.
There was a motion and a second to table. The mayor made a motion to table the item. I seconded the motion. The vote was unanimous.
Yes.
Which means that we can also table the next item.
Moving on to item number 18, final public comment on this. Seeing none, I will return the gavel back to the mayor.
All right, and then unless there's an objection, we will not take up item 21, and we'll now move to 21 Bravo. This is the second reading on the amendments to Title 10. Lee, any changes, substantial changes?
No, this is action to adopt an ordinance on second reading, amending Title 10 related to ATVs and other off-road vehicles. There has been no changes or other public comment since you introduced this ordinance on first reading.
Public comment? Board comment?
Actually, there were some changes. They were the changes that the board asked for, which are actually in here.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? I don't see anybody, so motion's in order, so we want to do it.
Ordinance number, Sue?
2016 R29.
It's a it's an ordinance, not a resolution.
2016-15.
I move to adopt Bill number 114 on second reading, ordinance number 2016-15, an ordinance amending Title 10, Vehicles and Traffic, by amending a portion of Chapter 10.30 Motorcycles, Section 10.30.120 Violations, to amend provisions related to certain motorcycle violations and adding thereto a new chapter, 10.31 Off-Road Vehicles, All-Terrain Vehicles, and Motorcycles that are not street-legal motorcycles, establishing various provisions related to off-road vehicles, all-terrain vehicles, and motorcycles that are not street-legal motorcycles.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Second it? Okay, got it. Sorry. On the motion, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Nice job, board, for working through all this stuff. Well done. All right. Let's take up city manager. Any questions with respect to the city manager on bills or other requests for payment? Anybody? Public comment? Anybody?
I'll make the motion.
Motion's in order.
Jump in there. I move to ratify the approval of bills and other requests for payments by the city manager for the period of October 8, 2016 through November 4, 2016.
Motion in a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay, let's go to item 23, Board of Supervisors, non-action, future agenda items, yada, yada. Supervisor Bagwell.
So I would just like to thank the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for doing a memorandum of understanding with the American National Red Cross and agreeing to be another emergency evacuation center for Carson City. I attended that event this last weekend, and so we have another site for use, so I want to thank them for that. And then I just also want to thank staff for working so hard. This was the best Granicus packet that we've had, so I wanted to note that.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Go.
I would just like to say that the Visitors Bureau has produced the save the date for the fair, which is June 27th through the 30th of 2017, and I'm just going to pass this down to the board so everybody can take a look.
Comments?
Yep, just wanted to note that we have new art in the Sierra room here. I miss our fish, but this is good too. And just wanted to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Yeah, happy. Yeah, city manager, go.
Mr. Mayor, the clerk has a little bit of late material for the appeal. I would ask that you take a look at it during lunch for the Bodine's appeal. I'm sorry. Pardon?
Speaking of the Bodine's appeal, so everybody knows, I'm going to open the matter this afternoon, and then I'm going to disclose that I'm going to be disclosing and abstaining from voting this afternoon, and I'll make that more clear when we take it up. But I'll open it up, and then we'll take other disclosures and whatever we need to do at that time. So, but I will not. I'll be turning the gavel over to Supervisor Abad, the Mayor Pro Tem, this afternoon. Okay. One other thing. While we're at it, there'll be a Pearl Harbor Day celebration, sort of call it a celebration, but it's really it'll be celebrating the 75th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, and we will have an event at the USS Nevada Memorial behind the Capitol on December 7th, and it's going to, I'm not exactly sure when it's going to start, but the event will be timed around 11:58 our time to coincide with 7:58 Hawaiian time when the Nevada actually went aground at Angels Point. And I have been given sand or soil from Angels Point, and on that day I am to spread the soil so that there's a connection between our state of Nevada and where the famous USS Nevada went aground and saved the day by not being sunk in the waterway into Pearl Harbor, into Fort Island. So that'll be a good day, and I'd also like to take this opportunity to say what the other board member said. Happy Thanksgiving. We live in a wonderful world and a wonderful country, and particularly a wonderful city, and we all have a lot to be thankful for this Thanksgiving. So, all right. Unless there's objection, we will be in recess until 1:30 or thereabouts. 1:30.